Okay, finally got the cam bearings back in. I ended up going through 2 sets of these. For the first set, I could not get this to go in without really damaging the bearing. So what I finally ended up doing, and then I got another set, and it didn't actually quite fit the end of the camshaft. So what I finally ended up doing is honing that out with the hone. I know it's probably not the best way to do it. And then I went to put the center bearing in. And here's a tip for you. Seemed to be going in real well, and that did that. Well, that center bearing is only beveled on one side. Luckily I had the second set, so I got that in. And then this bearing here was from the first set. And that little guy, I ended up having to hone it out a little bit to get the camshaft fit. So, got my bottle of assembly lube. We're gonna lube that up, slide it in there, and hopefully this works out. If you notice, we got the cam in there, and it does turn. It's a little tight, but I think it'll be all right. And then I also got this piece on so I could mount it correctly in on the engine stand. So I ended up getting a set of main bearings off of eBay. And so what I'm going to do next is we're Plasti-Guage it, make sure that's okay, and then I'll take the cam back, or the crank back out, and put the seals in, and we'll take care of that. Now, according to the engine repair, or the engine section in the Clark manual, the main bearing desired clearance is 0.001. So we can go, and then it says here, I'm not sure why it says that, 0.002 to 0.024 is what it says there. So I've got this this size here should tell us whether it's in there. So I'm going to go do that next, and hopefully everything comes out okay there. We're at that fun part where we get to put the rope seals in. So they come a little bit longer. You need to trim them off. And what I'm using is just this dowel to kind of hammer it in place. So I'll go ahead, and all I did is use a good size side cutters. You need to cut them off a little bit long, and then you cut them off with that. And then when I go to put them in, I'll put a little bit of RTV on there just to make sure that that seal's good. Howdy folks. Well, here's where we're at. I've got the crank in there and tightened down, and I've got the cam in there. So the next step is I've got to put this gasket on the front. I have to put stuff in there, and then I got to put that front bracket on there. Then I've got to put the crank gear on it and the cam gear on it, and then adjust the end plate on the crank gear. So I'll get this gooped up and get that on there, and then get that front plate on there, and we'll go from there. Okay folks, I've got the front plate on, gaskets wedged between here. I put our number 2 Forma gasket on both sides, around the edges and then around the holes, and put it back on. I will say this, I wish I would have taken more pictures when I took this off, because trying to figure out what goes here, here, and here was a little difficult, but I think I got it figured out right. And you'll notice the other thing I did is, you know, I painted part of this along the edge here, and then back here where it's going to be exposed, because I didn't want that to rust later on. But then I went and made sure that I removed any paint off of here, so when I put the gasket behind there and I put the gasket here, it would seal well. So next thing I need to do is I need to put this roller bearing back in, and then I will put the gears back on so that I can get the end play on the crankshaft set right. So basically this, I'll just use a socket to drive it back in there correctly, and then our get this on next, and get this on, or put that on temporarily because I have to remove it to get the front cover on. So we'll do that. I need to shim that with these little shims here. I got a new shim pack and I still have some shims from before, so I'll get that done. So I'll show you that as I go along here. Now there is a small oil hole here, and if I get some light for you, there's an oil hole there, so I need to try, there you go. I need to try to make sure that I line those up so that this gear gets some oil in it. So I'll go ahead and mark that with a marking pen and stuff. And luckily that oil hole, let me see, can you see it? Okay, that oil hole in there is fairly large, so hopefully this won't be too big of a problem. Okay, if you look in there, there's a ridge at the back, and I believe that is set so you can drive this back to that ridge, and it should line up with that oil hole, because I measured, and that's about a 1/2 inch. That oil hole is about a 1/2 inch from that ridge, and these are about a 1/2 inch, or that oil hole is a 1/2 inch from the end of the bearing. All right, I've got the crank in play taken care of. It's supposed to be between 0.004 and 0.006. Really tight on 0.006 and fairly good on 0.004, so I'm happy with that. Interesting thing is in all the manuals I looked, I could not find a torque spec for the crank bolt, so I just cranked it up as tight as I could. Had to take the pulley off so I can get the camshaft gear back on. I was looking at the gear here, and there are, right here's a single dot, and let's see if we get some light on it. And right up here, hopefully you can see that, there's 2 dots. Now, the camshaft, there's 2 dots there and a single dot there. So I don't know, I have to look. I don't know if you match it up on the 2 dots here and then the single dot there, if when it comes back around it lines up with the 2 dots there. So we'll slide it on there and see what happens. Okay folks, after a lot of trial and error and messing around, I finally got the cam gear lined up with the crank gear and got everything put on. So next thing we do is put the pistons back in. Well, put the piston rings on and then put the pistons back in. And then the oil pump. And then the oil pan. And then the valves and then the head. But anyway, we'll keep working on that. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, fellers and fellerettes. I've checked the ring gap and they're all okay. I didn't have to make any adjustments on that. So I'm going to put the pistons, or piston rings in the pistons. I've got it mounted in my vise. The instructions say to put this in the oil filler in there first. And then you put the top in next, and you're supposed to cock it 90 degrees from the gap here on the oil filler part, or the spacer. And the other thing about this is you don't overlap that. You make sure they're butted together on the spacer. So then I put this in here and carefully put it around this way. Without breaking it. So I've got that in there. And then you put the bottom one on 90 degrees opposite of where you put the top one on from the gap in the filler or spacer. So I'll come over here, start working that down this way, getting it under the spacer, and then I've got to adjust this. Not too bad. Okay, so there, we've got that on. Then your next ring, and these are not marked top or bottom, so conventional wisdom says put the bevel down. At least that's what I find on the internet. Now on these I can actually use my ring spacer. These were too small, or ring installer spreader. And I'm gonna do that one, the second one, right there. And then this one, our cock around, we'll go over here. I don't want any of those gaps to line up. Get in there. The other thing I did is I checked my gap in the actual slot itself with the ring. So we can go and put this in now. Okay, I put some break-in oil down the cylinders. Got the first cylinder or piston in. Here's the second one. I'm using my little tool here to try to keep the crank from being scored. Now, on the rod bearings, I was able to get new rod bearings for 2 and 4, but not 1 and 3. They're just not obtainable right now. So I'm going to go ahead and replace those. On these ones, I didn't on this one, I didn't. On this one, number one, I did not Plasti-Guage it because I was just putting the old one back in. This one, I put in and Plasti-Guage it, make sure we're going to be okay. And then I'll do that on 4 also. So what I'm going to do now is put my tool on here and pop that into place. And I'll set you up over here and show you how that goes. You don't want to force that too much. Obviously, I didn't have it on there. What? Come. Right, so we'll try it again. Hopefully that'll do it. Okay, first one right in. Probably don't have it up far enough. The bearing fell out. honest people, I did not have this much trouble with the first try. There we go. Now I just have to find where the beer is. Yeah, let's go ahead and well, what do they say about best laid plans? Okay. So we got that in there. And roll it over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up with the specs on that, and we'll Plasti-Guage it. And then crank it down and I'll do the rest of them. So I'm going to stop right here so I can go look up those specs on that, and I'll get the Plasti-Guage on there. Okay, I got the Plasti-Guage in there. Now, these only need to be torqued down to 45 foot-pounds. So, my bigger Craftsman torque wrench is only really accurate down to about 50. So I'm using this older style swing arm one. It's actually 45 pounds, so I'm going right between 40 and 45. There. Right there. See where we came out. Yeah. That's on there tight. See what a little leverage will do for us. Looks about perfect. So I will scrape that off, remove that, and crank those on, and then do the other two. Okay, folks. It's been about a year since we worked on the forklift project, and I got sidelined by some other things. But anyway, to give you an update of where we are, when I finished, I got the crank and the cam in and everything. Then I started putting in the pistons. And I got the first one in, and it's fine. Then I put the second one in and it got really tight, and I put the third one in and couldn't move it at all. So they're standard bearings, or they're standard bearings, not oversized, so that seemed odd to me. So I pushed the project aside and did some other projects. If you look at the channel, you see that I restored a Shopsmith from the 60s, 61 I believe it was. Anyway, I'm going to get back to this because I could really use the forklift, and I never stop on these projects because you forget what's where. I've got parts all over the place. So we're back to it. So then what I did is I took I never got to number 4 piston, the number 4 piston in. I got what I did is I removed. I don't know if you really want to see my face, but I suppose. Okay, what I did is I removed number 3 piston, no change. Removed number 2 piston, then the whole assembly started rotating again. So obviously my problem is on the number 2 piston. So one of the things I did notice on it is when I tried to put the rod bolts in on the one side, on this side, I could only get it in about that far. And then I'd almost have to pound on it to get it back in. So I did take a round file and file that down now so it slides in real easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back in and use the Plasti-Guage on it, see where we're at, and then see if that was the problem. I doubt it. If that's not the case, what I'll probably do is I had 2 sets of these. So I will probably try to replace it with another set of bearings and see if that fixes the problem. Hopefully it does. Hopefully one of these options does. And then we can finish putting the engine back together. And I can get the parts cleaned up in here and move on to the rest of it, because I still got the hoist to do. It's down there. I got the transaxle and the transmission I've got to do. And I really, really want to get this done. We'll try this too. I don't know how this is going to turn out. Okay, So, what I need to do, even though this is a little engine, and on the top of the piston it says 2F, so I'm assuming that's 2 front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to slide this up, slide this in here, and then we'll put the piston and compressor on there. Okay. Apparently I am not getting it tight enough. There we go. Okay. Now I get the, well, let's rotate that engine back down. Okay. Okay. other thing I did originally is I had a torque wrench that wasn't any good, or was off. I ended up over torquing them. And those are definitely 5/16. So here we go. Snug it up a bit. Okay, here we go. That looks like it is 0.001. Desired clearance 0.0015. Clearance limits 0.0027. So a little tight. Because I was at 0.0, between 0.001 and 0.0015. All right, so what I think we're due is we will back that out a little bit, put some more assembly lube on it. Tighten it up and see what we have. Yeah, I need to see if I got something plastic that I can remove that. Okay. The other thing I need to do is reapply some oil in the cylinder. Try my dull knife here, otherwise I have to go get a utility knife. Somehow, over the last year, I lost my other ball of assembly lube and had to go in and get some new stuff from O'Reilly. Such is life. Got a little bit of Plasti-Guage on the bearing. Okay. That. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to spin this back up top. And this is a little bitty sucker, but it weighs a lot. Or, I should say it weighs a lot. It's in the game. It'll work. Whatever. Okay. That's good enough. Now, what I'm going to do, clean my paw off. Drop a little bit of oil in there. Now, let's see what we get for rotation here. Nope. That did not work. Still too tight. So, plan B. Out of curiosity, okay. All right, let's try a different bearing. God dang mosquitoes. There it is. Drop the rod bolt, or the, yeah, rod bolt down into the, there it goes. Piston. There we go. Yeah, I know I'm not Plasti-Guaging this, I'm just gonna see what it does. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Should I just use wire in these, or I can also, tight to lock them in, or should I just use, and it's escape my cotter pins. Some of these cotter pins would be easier, but it had wire. Now the manual says you can use either. The Continental manual. Oh, that's much better. I don't know what the deal was with that set. Let's put number 3 back in, see how it goes. Well, I'll be darned. Got frustrated with it, and that cost me a whole stinking year. Should have done that. That's for sure. Okay, here we go. Better double check my ring placement. Should have done that on the other one, but I think it's okay. To the front. I'm not going to worry about Plasti-Guage on this one because I did check it. Huh. Like these are different than the others. I cannot find anything in the manual that tells me which direction for sure. I suppose those would be reversed. Because if you look at this, okay, this is here, so the short end's going here. Now on this one, this is here, so probably the short end would go down here. And that's the same, nope. Well, let's get it in there and I'll play around with it. Okay. Okay. Gonna clean that off. Oh, look at that. Okay. I'm excited. Are you guys excited? Okay, number 4. This one, we will Plasti-Guage. Almost need a damn washer in there to keep that lined up so it doesn't slide back. Okay, so number 4. We do not have the rings in it even. So where are the rings for number 4? Okay, got rings put on in piston number 4. Rod.